Well, hello and welcome back to Will Henry's Gunsmithing Workshop, where I try to demonstrate that an old man with old equipment and a limited skill set can still do some reasonably fine gunsmithing. Anyway, been a busy day. I've been getting ready for a gun show, which means I've been packing up a lot of really quality stuff that I plan to go sell. And but anyway, now that I'm done with that, I can get back to the job at hand, which, as you may recall, was the setting back and rechambering of this 9.3 by 62 barrel. Now, this barrel, I'm going to turn you around now so you can see the barrel. So I've got this barrel set up in the lathe now, and as usual, I'm indicating on the chamber now this barrel, as I'd mentioned before, is off a ZKK or ZKK, depending on which side of the border you're on, and factory barrel, but it was Cerakoted and nicely finished. So in order to protect that finish, I've mounted the barrel in the chuck with a piece of hard cardboard and then some aluminum flashing to protect it. And then I'm dialing on the inside on the factory chamber. Now, when you're setting back, in a case like this, where you're setting back a factory barrel, you're pretty well you're pretty well married to the alignment and so on that was established by the factory when they cut that chamber. So if this chamber is eccentric, in any way, there's not a lot I can do about that. Or if it's out of round, well, I can kind of fix that. But anyway, dialing on the chamber, in this case, I was able to dial this in to within about 3/10,000ths of an inch of total indicator run out, which means that it's actually offset by about 1.5 thou, which is not enough to bother me, and hopefully it won't bother you. So, and of course at the muzzle end, again, shift this around. The muzzle end, I aligned the chamber with our 3 screw setup in the 3 screws in the spindle, and then I could just set the dial here. And again, I used the Bushnell expandable arbor, which has proven to be a perfectly viable method of centering up the bore of the barrel at the muzzle end. You'll notice I have some masking tape on here to protect, not just to protect the band, the barrel band ramp from getting scuffed as I shove it through the spindle of the lathe. But anyway, so that was that, just your typical barrel setup, nothing unusual. So back to the other end again. So in this particular case, I've checked the threads and learned that they're a 26 millimeter by 2 millimeter pitch, and a 2 millimeter metric pitch is just a little less than 13 threads to the inch, and it works out to 0.0787 per revolution. So to turn this back one turn, I would cut off 0.078, and I'll probably cut off 0.077 or so. And because the extra 0.002, this barrel wasn't real tight, so I'll easily be able to get the extra 0.002, and if I can't, I can always shave a little more off. As anyone knows, if you don't cut enough off, you can always go back and cut more. But if you cut too much, you got a problem. So anyway, we'll cut off about 0.077, and then once I've done that, I'll go up and move the shoulder ahead the same amount, so that I've kept the relationship between the shoulder and the face the same. And then having done that, I'll be able to run the reamer in and recut that chamber. So there, we've got the camera set up in the the pigeon's nest here so you can have a better viewpoint. And so now, like I said, I'm going to set this back about 77 thousandths of an inch. In order to do that, I turn the compound around to 0 so it can feed straight in toward the chuck, and then went up to just touch the surface there, and now we'll see where we're at. And that touches just enough to remove a little bit of the Cerakote there, so that should be fine. And yeah, all right, so there we are, 77 thousandths. So one thing I'm going to do, I think, before I cut the shoulder, is I'm just going to measure, not because I don't think BRNO did it perfectly, but I'm just going to measure the action and see what this dimension should be, and we'll cut to that. So I'll be right back. And get our clearance here. Try to double check that. Ah. There we go. Make just a little relief cut at the end of the thread there. There's a relief cut in the receiver, but just in case, you know, I don't want the thread to be hanging up at all. So now we should be able to thread that receiver on. Now, as it happens, that comes up about 10 degrees short by hand, and when that hits that breech, it's pretty solid. So I was cautious and cut about 2 thousandths short, so we're going to go ahead and cut those 2 thou now. go. Move that burr. And now we're set. So just let me get my tools ready, and we'll be right back. Okay, I've checked the receiver just to be sure, and in the case of this particular action, in order for zero headspace or zero head clearance, we want to have 0.106 of protrusion of the gauge in order to have the correct headspace. Right now, let's see where we're at. Right now we're at 0.194, so we have to deepen this by a number that doesn't sound quite right. I'm going to remeasure this receiver. Well, there we go. So 728, 632, that's 106, all right. And check this again. Okay, that's better. It's so currently our protrusion is 0.180, and we're headed for 106. So that's 74 thousandths. So that's so we want to end up at 106. So let's see where we do end up. So again, for this job, we'll just hold the reamer with this handy homemade wrench. And we'll drive the reamer with the tailstock center. And for this purpose, we'll put the dead center in here. Now I'll generally ream at 90 RPM. For most cartridges, you get in the smaller cartridges like a 222, where it's a smaller diameter, you can speed it up. For a real large cartridge like a WSM, I might slow it down. In recent years, it's become more commonplace for people to ream at much higher speeds. The reamer materials are geared toward that, but if I'm being honest, I've never become real comfortable with that. So I stick with what I've always done. Again, just use the old dip and squirt method for cutting oil. And I think I've already mentioned, I generally use rigid nuclear cutting oil, and works fine. I'm not real sure that I ever started cutting on the shoulder to a significant amount there, but we'll see. No, I did not. So. And again, I always, after I blow the chips clear, for the most part, I'll run my fingernail down each cutting edge, and if I find any place that feels like it's got any chip welded to it there, and there's one there. I take a little piece of triangular stone and just stone the face of each cutting edge there, just to clean those chips off. And if you do this, you can be pretty sure that you won't scratch your chamber. You'll end up with a good clean finish. And everything goes well. It'll need no polishing whatsoever. Okay, I've made a couple of cuts, so we're getting down close to the end here. And at this point, we're cleaned up to the shoulder. Now, one problem when you're working with a factory chamber is that the chamber is a little larger than the reamer you're using. And so what can happen then is, because the reamer at the base isn't touching all the way around, you can get small chips in between the reamer and the chamber surface, and maybe give you a poor finish. We're hoping that's not going to happen here. We'll just see. So I've got about 35 thousandths to go. I'm going to take that in 2 cuts. And I'll take 20 thousandths to start with, and then I can see what I've got for finish, and so on. So, and on this last little bit, I always feed very, very slowly, and again, just to be sure that I'm not cutting any heavy chips that are going to scratch the surface, because I do want to try and get as fine a finish as I can. So there's 20 thousandths. And let's see what we've got. There, that's cleaning up nicely, so with our next cut, everything should be pretty clean. I'll polish with some Scotch-Brite, but that's more than anything to give me a little bit of scratch on the surface, so that the chamber isn't too slick. Okay, we're at 125. Check that. $128, and so we're aiming for 106. when I'm going to do my last cut, I tighten up the lock on the tailstock just enough that it drags just a little bit, and so that I can take any backlash out of the feed on the tailstock, so that my graduations on the tailstock read accurately. And again, prior to that final cut, I go through the stone in the face routine. There was a little bit of a catch there. The rest of the flutes seem okay. There we go. And another thing I do, I'll put just a little ATF on the ways there so that the tailstock slides easily. Makes it much easier to feed in. There we go, got a nice finish. And there we are at 0.106. So that's there we have it. So that's chambered and set back, and so now it's just a matter of first I'll give this a light polish with some Scotch-Brite, as I had mentioned, and of course in order to do that, this is where things get tricky, because I have to actually find where I put the drill with the Scotch-Brite attached. There we go. It's a fairly worn piece of Scotch-Brite. You'd have to rub that in there for an awful long time to remove 1/1000th of an inch. So there we go. The only other thing that I want to do is just give myself, just break this edge a little bit. And that's all there is to that. So there we go. It's that's all done. I'll clean up my tools and put them away and take the barrel out, and then, but I'm not going to put that rifle back until I get back to the gun show. It's getting a little late. I got to load up the car, and then I've got 300 miles to drive. Nothing's close around here. So anyway, thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.